I would like to see these large acquisition groups kind of go away.
Mm-hmm.
That would be nice, in my opinion, because I don't feel like it benefits the consumer.
Alex, I need to talk to you a little bit about what's going on with Embracer Group.
That's a group that gives you hugs, right?
It gives you such big hugs that it hugs entire game publishers, and squeezes them so much that they die.
Oh, it's EA.
They're really striving for it. It feels like it's funny because this has been an ongoing story for really a few years now, and we've never really talked about it on the show, and I'm surprised by that. Feels like the kind of thing that we should have discussed at some point, mostly because Embracer a few years back bought a publisher I am familiar with, Gearbox.
Yeah, you're a bit of a fan of Borderlands.
Considering that Borderlands is a big thing for Gearbox, as well as some other properties, obviously. The point of the matter is that I do care about Gearbox and what's going to happen to the properties. Back in 2021, I want to say, there was a buyout where Embracer bought Gearbox for $1.3 billion. Big chunk of change.
A little bit of walking around change.
Yes. It's a little bit.
If you had seen that laying on the ground, Bill Gates would have leaned down to pick that money up.
Yeah, he would have been okay with getting leg day in so that he could bend down to pick that up. That is a not insignificant amount of money. They had bought up other things as well. They had been the owners of like Tomb Raider and Dead Island and everything like that. And we had Crystal Dynamics was one of those that they picked up because of that.
Well, that makes sense if they had Tomb Raider, so...
Yeah, Tomb Raider, and they had also bought Volition. That was another big one. Since then, Volition
has closed.
They have closed Volition, and they have laid off some of the staff at Crystal Dynamics, and that all came after the collapse of a deal. They were going to get a new investor, I should say, to the tune of $2 billion for an infusion. They were going to get a new investment back in 2023, and it did not happen. And it was a Saudi Arabian company. They decided to pull out of that deal, and after that, their stock just crashed by about 40%. And it was right after this that they started shuttering some of the studios and doing layoffs at some of the other studios, and they've been trying to become financially solvent since that point. We have had new information come out specifically on Gearbox recently, though, which is that Embracer has just sold key Gearbox Entertainment assets to Take-Two Interactive for $460 million.
They didn't sell Gearbox the company, they sold like certain IP from it?
They sold certain aspects. So this is where it gets really interesting. The divested assets include, I'm reading here from Chris Kerr, who was one of the first to report on it from a statement Embracer made themselves. The divested assets include Gearbox Software, Gearbox Montreal, Gearbox Studio Quebec, and franchises including Borderlands, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Risk of Rain, and more. However, it is still retaining Gearbox Publishing San Francisco, which includes publishing rights to the Remnant franchise, Hyper Light Breaker, and some other unannounced titles. It's keeping Cryptic Studios, who does Neverwinter Online and Star Trek Online. For some reason, Lost Boys Interactive and Captured...
I don't even know what those are.
I don't know what they make. And Captured Dimensions.
Okay.
You
know, I think I saw earlier I don't remember the quote, but it was Nick Calandra of Second Wind.
Yep.
Said something about this and said that the good news about like breaking up some of these larger companies is that a lot of these people that are making games are able to move like away from like Silicon Valley, away from the big tech capitals too, and moving back to places that are more affordable, which is actually a good thing for like making games as is.
I suppose.
Oh, he said, wonder with all these layoffs in the industry, if we'll start to see studios move out of super expensive tech zones and more into more areas of the Midwest, reducing people's cost of living, help stabilizing budgets for games, and just broaden out where talent comes from in general.
Yeah, I think
wasn't quite on this, but it was, I think, part of the layoff thing. So it's related.
Yeah, in this case, though, I don't know if that's going to happen. And the reason I say that is because, so, these parts of Gearbox are going to be going to Take-Two. Take-Two is based out of New York. I believe their headquarters are in New York. So not like the Midwest where it's like low income or something like that.
Yeah, but it's also not like Silicon Valley, California.
True, and I don't know where a lot of the studios are located because similar to like Ubisoft, I believe Take-Two has several different sites where they actually do that work. It could end up being something sort of like how Georgia is a big place for filming now because they made their industry really receptive to filmmaking. But I think it's really interesting because when I see this, I know that it's not the entirety of Gearbox, but $460 million is a lot less than $1.2 billion. You know,
just by a margin.
Yeah, if I do my calculations, if I do my calculations right, I can't say that that's less than half of what they paid for it, and I can't imagine that the majority of that money was so that they could keep Remnant and Hyper Light Breaker.
I feel like it's actually closer to a third.
Yes, it is.
If it's 1.2 billion and they're paid 400 million.
Yes, you are correct.
Yeah.
It is closer to a third.
I'm bad at math, but I was like, I feel like that's an even divisible number. That's a third.
So do you think that 2/3 of the value of Gearbox was wrapped up in Cryptic Studios and Hyper Light Breaker?
Neverwinter Online and
Star Trek Online.
Star Trek Online.
Cryptic,
I mean,
maybe.
MMOs cost a lot to produce and maintain, but can make a lot of money.
I think they do okay, but
I feel like maybe those make money, but I don't know how much.
Yeah.
I've tried Neverwinter Online. It wasn't that great.
I tried Star Trek Online as well, and Neverwinter, and they were fine. They were fine, but
no, they weren't.
Yeah, they're not especially great. I will read the one quote that they give from Lars Wingefors, the co-founder and CEO of Embracer, who said, "Today's announcement marks the result of the final structured divestment process and is an important step in transforming Embracer into the future with notably lower net debt and improved free cash flow." Basically what he's saying is the company needed to get rid of assets because it was not financially solvent at present and needed to get rid of some stuff.
What I'm hearing is they acquired all these companies by essentially going into debt.
Basically,
a lot of debt.
Basically, the way I read it is we bought a lot of these companies thinking that we'd be able to maintain them, but we bit off way more than we could chew, and we didn't get the investors that we thought we were going to get. And now what we have to do is sell a bunch of them off because we cannot maintain them with our current funding.
I would like to see these large acquisition groups kind of go away.
Mm-hmm.
That would be nice, in my opinion, because I don't feel like it benefits the consumer.
No.
I don't feel like it benefits the game companies overall. If they're getting bought and then resold and have to lay off like this, it's obviously not helping them either, so...
One of the best and most celebrated games of last year was essentially done by an indie studio. When I'm talking about...
Wait, that's this year.
I'm thinking Baldur's Gate 3, because that was Larian Studios, and Larian isn't, owned by a large company. Lars went on to say, as one of the world's greatest games developers, I am confident that Gearbox will continue to innovate and thrive in their new home within Take-Two.
Thought he was trying to say he's one of the games company's best, whatever developers.
Well, no, because Embracer doesn't do development. They're just the
they do investments.
Company. Yeah, they're the investment company.
Yeah, again, they're like a bank.
Kinda, yeah. I guess so.
Yeah, which, I don't think banks should be allowed to do that shit either. Stop buying property, keep your money in the bank, stop it.
It's driving the price of housing up, guys.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of the point.
The TLDR, fuck giant corporations.
That is the upshot of all of this. At a certain point, once upon a time, back when things worked, we would have broken these giant corporations up. Because there becomes a part where they become practically monopolies. And they have no actual competition. And they need to have competition to maintain. So.
I just don't want them all owned by the same people. What happens if that company goes down? Suddenly they have to divest all these companies and we lose tons of game developers.
You mean you don't want Microsoft, Blizzard, Activision, King to be in charge of, a third of the game market? And
no.
I think Embracer has made a very bad financial decision.
Good.
I don't have billions of dollars to invest into things, but I feel, looking at what you paid for Gearbox in 2021 and all of the really, really valuable things that you had to sell off for not that much 3 years later, this was not good. Maybe think about that in the future. Maybe don't buy everything, buy some things, and then try to invest into them to make them better, and then you make them worth more.
Yeah. Buy your local podcast called Total Pummel Lockdown and invest in them and make them better.
We can be bought for exactly $300 million. I think that is how much we are worth. I figured that out because of a Saudi investment firm that he told me that that's what we're worth. So
yeah, we've got that Saudi oil money in us.
Buy it, buy now. Hey, if you have any ideas of what should happen to Gearbox, there had been some talk that Gearbox might be able to buy themselves out, essentially, that they could become an independent studio again, and I don't think that's was actually entertained as an idea. But it was a nice thought.
Usually isn't. We had rumors about that with D&D and WotC as well, and look what happened. So.
Yeah, exactly. Not happening, folks. I'm sorry. Be nice, but it's not happening. Hasbro's gonna keep owning them. If anyone has any thoughts on it, please let us know in the comments down below.